It's Monday the 14th of September, the day that in 1940 a Spurs-Chelsea game was interrupted by an air raid siren after 15 minutes, but resumed 80 minutes later. And now they stop for a bit of a storm. Who said footballers haven't gone soft, eh? This is your E-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham, no one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham, no one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham, no one can stop them.
Well, welcome to the podcast, guys. It's Monday night, recording on a Monday night for a change. Welcome to the show. We record each and every week throughout the season, normally on a Sunday night, as I say, but tonight we're here on a Monday. If you like what you hear, there's multiple ways to stay in touch with all things E-Spurs. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at E_Spurs. Loads of stuff going on there each and every day, including the lunch hunch, our lunchtime quiz, Spurs on this day, loads of other stuff. So well worth tuning into that. On Facebook is E-Spurs page, all one word. Again, loads going on there. And you can also follow us on Google Plus and YouTube. All of our podcasts now go up on our YouTube page. So if you haven't got iTunes or an Apple device, you've got a YouTube alternative now. You can download them directly from YouTube. The links to those are all quite lengthy, so to get the links on where to follow us, check out our website. That's www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk, and there's loads of other stuff goes up on there on a daily basis, including previews, articles, reviews, and much, much more. So check that out, guys. Tonight we'll be looking back at the smash and grab win versus Sunderland, previewing the games against Qarabag and Crystal Palace. Plus, in our social media debate, we'll be asking if you could bring back any Spurs player from the past, who would you bring back and why? So get your thinking caps on for that one, guys. I know our panel tonight are already thinking away on that one. Before we start talking Spurs, it's time, as always, for you guys listening out there to do some work and get those thinking caps on. You're about to hear a clip of a Spurs star from the past with one slight difference. It's speeded up. All you've got to do is guess who the former Spur is, and we'll reveal the answer at the end of the show. Here's a clip.
Well, no, I didn't hate it. I wanted to do more with the ball, but in those days, it's a very, I've told it so many times. I came back from an international match, and I wasn't happy with my ball control and skill because I played against better players.
So that's our former Spur. Let us know if you guess who it is at E_Spurs. As I say, we'll reveal the answer at the end of the show, and each and every week we'll do the same. So let's, without further ado, introduce the team for tonight. Back for his second podcast. He was on a couple of weeks ago. Great guy, big Spurs fan. It's Jon Mannings. How you doing, buddy?
All good, mate. All good. Buzzing still after yesterday.
Yeah, we're just speaking off air there, John. It's nice to come on to the podcast after a win, eh?
Oh, most definitely. Well, much needed and much celebrated as well.
Certainly is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a gentleman who'll share those views, making his debut on the podcast tonight. We're going to cross the Atlantic a couple of thousand miles away over in New York. It's George Cubberly. How you doing, George?
I'm all right. I can't complain. Like you said, a win is a win. So it makes my week a hell of a lot better, with 3 points in the bag.
Absolutely, certainly is nothing better than a Spurs win to round off the weekend. George, I mentioned there you're from New York. Just tell us a little bit, if you can, as you're making your debut on the show, a little bit about how you came to support Spurs and how you really fell in love with the side.
Well, this probably goes back to around after the 2006 World Cup, I believe. It's when they really started picking up and showing a lot more games here in the States, primarily the Premier League. So. After they realized a lot of eyes were on that World Cup, they started showing more. And I kind of started to fall in love with the Premier League. In the 90s in the U.S., it was mostly the Serie A that was the big league. And the Milan clubs were the popular jerseys you'd see. But after 2006, I think it kind of took a spin. So started focusing more on the Premier League. And I did like Spurs, particularly because they did play that attractive kind of football. But they didn't really have the big kind of money resources attached to them. So you could kind of tell that they were kind of the fans team. So after that, after watching them for a while, they really started to pick up when I was in college and university. That's when we started to break into the Champions League and just see Gareth Bale's amazing rise to stardom. And I think we just had like a really good team back in the latter part of the 2000s as well. obviously with Bale and Modric going on. But everything was very balanced and they were fun to watch. And I definitely, have fallen in love with the club since. Kind of gone borderline obsessive, if you'll ask my girlfriend. But, it's a healthy obsession, though. It's a healthy obsession.
Absolutely. Now, George, you mentioned the Champions League season 2010, and a couple of the Spurs fans we've had on from the States mentioned that that's what drew them to Spurs, was that great season, the exposure that Spurs got. Did you notice a growth in the support over there for Spurs during that time?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a gradual growth here in the United States. You kind of feel as though every year more and more Spurs fans keep popping up. But I think the increased exposure as well kind of helps with the overall growth of not only the Spurs presence, but just the Premier League presence as well. So I think a lot of the American fans don't want to just jump the bandwagon onto a Man United or a Chelsea team, and they kind of want to look for that proper club that, kind of feels like they're building towards something, which I think is what's happening at Spurs.
Absolutely. Great stuff. And listen, George, great to have you on, mate. And I'm sure we'll hear from you lots more throughout the show. But welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, boys. I appreciate you guys having me here.
No problem at all. More than welcome. Listen, guys, we're going to start. First of all, obviously, we've been off the air for a few weeks. We've had the international break. I just want to get very quickly, John, your thoughts on the international break. It's subject that splits people, isn't it, nowadays, especially for fans in the UK and England in particular. Are you a fan of the international breaks? A lot of people seem to, because football, and in particular Premier League football, is so partisan nowadays, a lot of people see the international break as a bit of an inconvenience almost, which is in some ways quite sad. What's your thoughts on the old international football?
Well, I mean, I must admit, I am a fan. I'm a massive England supporter as well. I am club over country, if you made me pick. But I am definitely a massive England fan, and I think it does split people, and I can understand why, because the England team have not exactly been great over the last few years. But from a personal point of view, I think it gives me the opportunity to watch a game of football without, ending up with no nails and sweaty palms and stuff. It means there's still a couple of our players involved, not just for England, of course, but for a few other countries. And I can sort of relax and enjoy it a little bit more than I can when Tottenham's playing. But, yeah, I think, especially the international break was just had. England have confirmed their qualification now for France next year, which is brilliant. So, yeah, I can't really grumble this time. I think the only problem most people have is just when the international breaks are. They always seem to be, badly timed. Just the end of the transfer window, teams are just starting to get on a roll, and then we have a break. And I think that's probably the reason why people don't enjoy it so much or are against it, just because of the timing, I think.
Yeah, it does seem odd sometimes, doesn't it? You get to a crucial point in the season, then you've got a couple of international games, and I'm sure managers are the first persons to put their hands up on that one. Listen, we're going to move on to yesterday's game, which is what we're here to talk about, of course. And finally, we got a great win up at Sunderland. No easy place to go. And I obviously manage a couple of websites, and on those websites, I know that a couple of Sunderland fans were quite optimistic going into the game, writing articles. They'd written that it was a good time to face Spurs, shall we say, and they thought they could get a win. Having said that, we stuck in there, didn't we, John? And we ground out a result. I said at the top of the show, a bit of a smash and grab. Would that be fair to say, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose just because we won 1-0 and we scored in the 82nd minute, you'd be tempted to say that. But going back to the Sunderland fans, they ain't beaten us in 11 goes now. So I don't know how. Things must be quite bad for them if they're thinking, oh yeah, we've got Spurs, we'll be all right this weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't think it was. Not really, no. I think over the course of the game we had better chances. I think the fitness issue for them was definitely showed, especially towards the end. I mean, you had Van Aanholt go down with 25 minutes to go with cramp, which is ridiculous, really, in the Premier League. But yeah, I don't think it was. I think it was just a really, really patient performance. If we'd have got an early goal, it would have been good. But the fact that we didn't, no heads dropped, and the fact that that lovely little move that we put together with 8 minutes to go, the Sunderland players probably were too knackered to be able to do that. So it was just a case of wait, be patient, and when the chance comes, you've got to take it, and we did. Yeah,
it was a fantastic goal, wasn't it? George, we had a fairly changed squad going into this game. Ericsson obviously was out again. Dele Alli came in for his full debut. Rose was benched, and a few other changes there. What did you make of the team's performance?
I thought we saw certain individuals step up to the performance and were actually quite impressive. Ryan Mason had an absolute wonderful match.
Yeah.
He really dictated play from deep in the midfield, and he made some of those late runs into the box, which tend to cause problems for teams that like to sit back. It's why we bought a player like Paulinho a few seasons ago. Obviously, we never really saw the full potential of him, but with Mason yesterday, especially going back to his goal, wonderful. I think it was something like a 15 pass buildup, but it was wonderful play between him, Dyer, and Lamela in the midfield. And it's been kind of frustrating with Mason so far this season because you've been finding him getting into these pockets of space, but he's just kind of lacked end product. However, yesterday I think it finally clicked for him, and he really stepped up and took over the midfield role. And thankfully it was his goal that got us those 3 points.
He did. He looked very bright, didn't he, yesterday? He's coming for a fair bit of criticism from some quarters for being a bit flaky in some games, drifting in and out of games. But yesterday, absolutely fantastic, and the passion that him and the likes of Kane always play with, it's great to see. John, we mentioned their Dyer. Would you say man of the match yesterday?
Without a doubt, mate. Without a doubt.
How good? I mean, he's been put into that position, isn't he? That defensive midfield position. So how important is he now in that role, do you think, to Spurs, bearing in mind our lack of defensive midfield options?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously he has become a very important part of the team because especially now we seem to be picking up injuries right in that wrong position for us. But yeah, I think he's got better every game so far this season, and he's definitely grown into it. Against Man United first game, he did look like a fish out of water, to be honest, but he has got gradually better. And the last two games, especially at home to Everton, and then yesterday, I thought he was immense. Really good.
Yeah, it's really pleasing to see another one of the young crop in there.
Yeah, definitely.
We didn't see NG, did we? But one player we did see that came in was Son. George, what did you make of the new boy's debut?
Son is obviously a player. I used to watch him a little bit when he was at Leverkusen, and I thought that he was a player that could definitely make an impact if he were to come to Spurs. So it was nice seeing him come in towards the end of the window, kind of under the radar. I don't think anybody was really pipping him to come to the club, but he came in yesterday. He looked all right, but you could definitely tell there's a bit of a communication issue. I think once that gets sorted out and he starts to play a little more with the likes of Kane and get guys like Eriksen back into the squad, I think he could be very, very dangerous for us. Just his first touch and his general football IQ is pretty impressive, and I think once we like I said, integrate him into the team a little bit more and get him into those dangerous pockets of space, I think the fact that he's 2-footed is also going to be very dangerous for Spurs in the future, because he scored a lot of goals with both his left and his right foot last season in the Bundesliga. So it's something that I really want to see from a couple of our guys in midfield who tend to be kind of one-footed. Eriksen with his right foot and Lamela with his left foot. It's kind of been begging for somebody to come in who can just snap a shot with either side. And I think with Son, we're going to start seeing that from him, and I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to see someone in there that can potentially link the midfield with the attack, which is what we've been craving so far. George, you mentioned there you've seen a bit of the Bundesliga from last season. What's your feelings and thoughts on, we're told that Son can play as a striker and that he may be deployed in that role. What's your thoughts on that? Have you seen enough of him to know whether or not he'll be able to fill that role?
I enjoyed the Twitter meltdown the day that people noticed that he was listed as a striker, and everyone was calling for all the conspiracy theories were coming out about how the club changed that in the last day to make us feel better. But he was a very, very attacking player at Leverkusen, and I know he liked to play out far, I think on the right side, but just his offensive contribution in general kind of, I think, could warrant him as just a forward. We get very attached to labels nowadays, especially with all the football manager games and FIFAs, and people like to kind of have a set idea of who and what a player is. But I think Poch even came out and said it himself that he has a lot of interchanging kind of players who he likes to play up top, who can kind of rotate and fill in different positions. And I think Son is kind of that malleable player who can, sit out wide right or could sit out wide left or even in the center. And so I think that's why he was ultimately brought to the team. I don't think I would say he's an all out and out striker. But that, you could apply that to a lot of different kinds of players. Obviously, Kane is a striker. If you look at all the bare requirements of what it meets. But I think Son is more than capable of playing up top. I just think he needs someone to play off with, like a Harry Kane or like a Christian Eriksen.
Yeah, and that would be, I think, the hope now that he can develop a bit of an understanding with Harry Kane. John, with regards to the boy Kane, not scored so far yet this season, but obviously scored on international duty. Should we be concerned by the so-called drought?
Well, I'm not at all. I mean, I think the only time I ever start worrying about strikers is when they stop getting into the positions.
Yeah.
In other words, yesterday Kane had, obviously there was the diagonal which came over from Mason, which he should have done better with a volley. And there was another one a little while later where he just smashed it at the keeper. But we saw, like, the start of last season, for example, I think Adebayor made about 11 starts before he got dropped from the first team. He only got 1 goal against QPR. But what he was doing was he kept drifting out left and dropping far too deep. And he was never where you need your striker to be at the crucial moments. Whereas Harry's not done that. He is still where he needs to be. And the goals will come. I'm not worried at all. The fact that, we've not scored that many is a slight worry. But we're still unbeaten in 4. He ain't played bad. He's made a contribution in every game. Even yesterday for the goal, what I really liked about Harry yesterday, he drew the ball out with him because he knew that, the left back, Van Arnold, as I've already said, was knackered and it would have left room for Ryan Mason to run into, which is exactly what he done. So he drew the ball out, played a little touch off to Lamela, which allowed him to play the pass through. And yeah, he was involved in the whole game. He doesn't hide. He doesn't not want the ball because things are not going his way. But he's too good for this to carry on for too long. Don't worry.
Yeah,
I promise you.
And that goal he scored in midweek, mate, class, written all over it.
Well, both the goals he scored for England were very good. I mean, all right, last Saturday you got people going, oh, it's San Marino,
Yeah.
Got a painter and decorator in goal and all the rest of it. But the way, he made the run and the finish was just beautiful. And the one against Switzerland, it could have gone anywhere, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It's the way he swung his left foot but controlled it so well and put it exactly where he wanted to put it.
And that was no easy finish, was it?
No, not at all. It wasn't. It's coming across on which is an absolute carpet of a pitch at Wembley at some speed. It was zipped across there, and if he'd have mistimed it, he would have looked like a right donut. But he didn't. He crunched it exactly where he wanted to, and it flew in, and it was a great finish. And that's why I'm really not worried about him. He will come good. He's not a one-season wonder, and he will come good.
Yeah, let's hope so. I'm sure the majority of people out there agree with you, mate. Let's get your thoughts on yesterday's game on our social media, on our Twitter feed. Ross says we won, but our attack is weak, very weak. Townsend was quality when he came on. We'll come on to that in just a moment. Peter Katsabiris, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, says defence was exposed because although talented, the rest of the team was lightweight, could have played deeper to expose Sunderland's midfield and defence. Kev Clark says a win is a win, but those shirts are shoddy quality. They rip too easily. And I've got to say, I agree with them, guys. I don't know if any of you saw the 2 incidents of those shirts. I mean, I'm sure there's a few words been exchanged between Under Armour and the club after the game.
Well, I'm just glad the players don't have to fork out 55 quid a piece, because if they did, I'm sure they'd have to underpad it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's all right for them, eh? Yeah, I'm sure there's a few cancelled orders possibly gone in over the weekend. But yeah, strange one to see. Do you remember those shirts, guys? I think it might have been around the 2006 time that George was talking about just a moment there, when we had those skin-tight Kappa shirts. Do you remember those?
Yep. I remember them very well.
And they sort of was almost the same, slightest pull on those shirts, and it was, a tear straight away. So seems the quality hasn't improved too much. But
well, maybe I reckon, to be fair, it's probably more of a problem that the referees are not picking up on these kind of things. There was a couple of times yesterday where there was one, especially on Vertonghen, where I think it was John O'Shea had hold of his shirt and his arm around his face. And if that's not proof enough, he's ripped his shirt, like a ripped shirt for was it Walker and Harry, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Then they ain't doing it to their own shirts, are they?
No.
So maybe it's a tactical ploy by Under Armour to win us a few more penalties this season.
I like your thinking, yeah. Listen, we need all the help we can get, so we'll take that. We'll take it. George, just going back to some of the comments from yesterday with regards to our defence, Defoe, big Spurs hero there, it's almost a shame to see him playing in another side because of the great memories we've got of this guy at Spurs. Still a complete handful, isn't he? This guy could still do a job at a big Premier League club, you would think.
Yeah, he was. He definitely had his chances yesterday. I mean, you kind of going into the match, you were kind of in the back of your head thinking, "Oh God, I hope Defoe doesn't score on us." But you almost knew that he was going to get some really good chances, and lo and behold, he did. But I think his chances kind of came from the midfield falling asleep and not really closing it down. No discredit to Dyer; he's been phenomenal so far, stepping up to that center defensive midfield role. But at times when the midfield organization would kind of break down and Sunderland was able to pick out a pass, it's still pretty impressive how Defoe, he still very much so has it. I think his goal last season was one of the best goals of the season too. So it's bittersweet. You kind of wish he hung around the club for a little bit longer. But I don't know if he would be playing like that had he still been at Spurs. He needs to be at a lower club where he could still stay hungry. But overall, I thought that our defense has been the big improvement of the season so far. We obviously addressed that in our transfer window, and I really like Toby Alderweireld and Jan Vertonghen's partnership back there. They have a very solid understanding, and it's something that we haven't really seen in the past season or two. I'd like to even go as far back as saying since Ledley departed, we haven't really seen a nice commanding center back pair. So I do like that. I would like to see some of the new guys come in, which I think we'll see with Europa this week, guys like Kevin Wimmer and Kieran Trippier. I do want to see Trippier get in on that right back side because although Kyle Walker does offer us a lot of pace going forward, I would like to see someone who's a little more defensive-minded on the ball and who can deliver really good crosses into the box, which apparently is one of Trippier's best attributes. Because going back to Kane as well, he's a player that does get into the space. And like John was saying, you'd be worried if he was drifting out or if he wasn't, finding these pockets of space. But he is. He's just not making the kind of connection he needs to, or he's, hitting him into the goalkeeper. His finish against Switzerland was very, very delightful. So he's very clinical with his finishing, and I think it's one of his best attributes is his finishing mechanics. So as long as he gets those proper, gets the proper service, the goals will come. And I'm not worried about that aspect at all. But I think yesterday one of the big things was Poch's substitutes. It's kind of something he's come under criticism a lot over the season. People kind of saying he makes substitutions too late in the game or he brings on the wrong types of players. However, yesterday he got him spot on. Once Townsend came on, he was running at the fullback and was able to get a couple of nice balls into the box. I was expecting him to cut left and have a shot, but you could definitely tell he's been drilled to take it out wide, cross the ball in. There are other people who can do the work for him. And Lamela as well was definitely an impact sub. It didn't really look so hot for him in the Stoke match. He received a lot of vitriol afterwards. But there's certain matches that he could come in and make a difference. And I think Sunderland was definitely calling for him, and he was involved in the build-up play. I think he created something like 4 chances and may have even had a 100% passing completion rate. So he definitely made a really good impact, and I think that credit should go to Poch for making these solid substitutions late in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to, as we had done on the show in previous weeks, if you're going to criticise the manager for some of the substitutions in, for example, the Everton game, then he's got to be commended for those subs yesterday, which changed the game in effect. And John, I mean, it was great to see the likes of Townsend, who I'm sure was fired up no end for yesterday's game, bearing in mind that he hasn't had a look in under Pochettino really as yet, has he? And his pace, his trickery really changed the game when we needed an extra dimension.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it comes back down to, he's got real competition now, and I think the players understand that. Like Lamela can't keep coming on and not doing anything, and Townsend the same. They've got Son came in yesterday. You've still got Clinton to play as well. So I think they understand that now really is the time where they need to seize every opportunity. And both Lamela and Townsend are getting to that age now where I think if they are going to make a big impact in this league, and hopefully for us, then they need to start producing week in, week out now when they get a chance. So yeah, it was great to see Andros come on. he's always been one of my favourites. Really, I think he's just because he loves the club, and I think it does make a big difference for the fans. But yeah, I was well pleased with him yesterday. He did look good. He roasted the fullback a couple of times, and Lamela was really good as well. But I just wish that chance Lamela had with his head. I really wish he'd have popped that one in, because then hopefully all of especially on the social media stuff, people just get off of his back and I know he's had a chances, I understand that, but it don't help, and he probably does read some of it, if he can read English, but he's let's just get on and support him, and they've both done really well, and so did Tom Carroll, I think, when he come on. I know he didn't have long, but he's another player that he's got to perform every single time he gets on the pitch, and I think that was the difference yesterday. You bringing on 3 players who know they've got to take the chance, and that, all 3 of them done really well. But yeah, especially Andros and Eric Lamela,
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd think they'd have some part to play in the week. Certainly Lamela, the likes of Tommy Carroll, Pritchard, get the youngsters in there. It'd be interesting to see who he plays up front on Thursday night, bearing in mind wants to avoid burnout for Kane. Be interesting to see what he chooses on Thursday night, but we'll come on to that in a moment. Guys, let's move on. That wraps up yesterday. Great 3 points, as I say. On to Crystal Palace next week, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Now, listen, on social media, if you aren't following us on Twitter, you'll know that every week we put out a question in order to stir some debate, shall we say. And this week we thought we'd go a bit light-hearted on the old debate and bring back some memories for you. So the question we asked tonight on our social media was, if you could bring back any Spurs player from the past, who would it be to play in the current side and why? And some great responses. First of all, I'll tell you what though, we're going to go to our guys and see what they say. John, I know we've spoken about a few of your heroes in the past, but who would you go for?
I think if you're thinking about it from a practical point of view, then I'd probably say Scott Parker at the moment.
Yeah.
But
great shout.
But being greedy, I'd say, just because I loved watching the guy play and his left foot was an absolute wand, I would say, I'm not going to say Gareth Bale, but I'm going to say Raphael van der Vaart, because I think he'd slot so lovely into our team at the minute. Harry wouldn't know the meaning of the word drought if he had Rafa playing behind him.
No, it'd be great to see. There were rumours in the summer, wasn't there, that he'd come back if he was asked. Never happened, but I think just for that moment it was nice to dream. So I'm guessing, guys, that the likes of Andy Booth and Paolo Tramezzani wouldn't be in the selection to bring back.
Well, I think we're all right at left back. I think, Davies and Rose are 2 decent players, and unless Andy Booth can come back and clean Harry's boots if he fancies, but other than that, you're all right.
Well, yeah, you mentioned left back there. I hear Timothy Atuba's available. Hey, listen, a wonder go up at Newcastle, I remember. So even Atuba.
It was 11 years ago, though.
It was. Yeah, the good old days, eh?
Yeah.
George, any ideas on who you bring back to the Spurs side?
I mean, I would say Van der Vaart, although I do see shades of him in Christian Eriksen. So I'm hoping Eriksen can kind of continue his progression. He's still very young, and I think he's kind of our Van der Vaart somewhat replacement. But I think I would have to bring back Modric. I really miss the creative talisman in the deeper part of the midfield. Imagine having, him and someone like Bentaleb or him and Mason together, I think would be wonderful. But if I was, if you said you could have any player back, no cost, no nothing, I mean, it'd be stupid not to say Gareth Bale just for the amount of goals he would bring to our side. So either it's a toss up between between Modric and Bale. And if you told me that, one player was going to come in and bring, 15 goals a season to us, I'd probably have to say, all right, then sign him up. And so that for me is Bale.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I'm sure if 100 million ever becomes available, then I'm sure the deal can be done. It'd be great, wouldn't it? Even one day to see Bale back in a Spurs shirt.
Oh yeah, of course.
Be amazing.
I'll tell you one, actually. Sorry to butt in, guys. One who, George, I'm sure you're well aware of and how good he still is Robbie Keane. And
oh yeah,
he's phenomenal. I suppose we could get him back. You never know if he wanted to come back for a couple of months in the winter.
Yeah, he's doing quite well in MLS. It's pretty impressive. And when Rooney broke the record for England, everyone was kind of making jokes and looking, showing Robbie Keane's stats for Ireland, and it dwarfs Rooney's.
Yeah, 67 goals I think he's got for Ireland now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the goals he scored, going back, some of the goals he scored for Spurs, they weren't tap-ins, were they? He never scored a tap-in.
No.
They were always sort of chip it over one, take it round another, and then slot it home. I think it was one game against possibly Leeds. I can't quite remember now, but quality player on his day.
Yeah, he was. I think the goal against, I think it was Leeds, where he's hit it with the outside of his boot from outside the area, and Paul Robinson was in goal for them. But for me, the one I enjoyed the most, I think it was his 100th Tottenham goal.
Yeah.
I was there. We played Sunderland at home. Lennon scored in the first couple of minutes. Sunderland had us under the cosh for 85 minutes. Keane comes on and scores an absolute worldie. The ball was coming down the left, sort of halfway between the edge of the box and the touchline, and he sort of hit it with the outside of his foot and lobbed the keeper from a ridiculous angle. But yeah, all of I love him. He was so good, and I think from when I started going regularly, he was the man. Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely have him back.
And that, I mean, guys, that on the podcast in recent weeks, that's the kind of Spurs player I think that most Spurs fans were craving in this window, wasn't it? You know, that sort of. It doesn't even, I don't think many people would put Keane in a world-class bracket as much as we love him, but that sort of player that can come on and change a game, or that would make you buy a ticket just to see that player,
I think he's the kind of player I would put him in. Well, apart from what he's done with LA Galaxy, which has obviously been brilliant, but he reminds me a little bit of, say, Michael Owen or Robbie Fowler, only ever good in a Liverpool shirt.
Yeah. That
may be a little bit harsh, but Robbie Keane he was always one of our top players, and he always played well for us, and he never really recreated that form anywhere else. Yeah. So maybe,
I think the biggest thing, it was, especially during Robin Keane's tenures, we also had Berbatov, we also had Defoe, and now we only have, the likes of Harry Kane. So I think that's another thing that a lot of fans are missing right now is just our options up front. Even afterwards, with Pavlyuchenko and Peter Crouch as well. We want more options up front rather than just Harry Kane. And I mean, it doesn't look like he's being so much affected by being the only striker up top, but you do need that kind of person to come in and light a fire and say, oh, you know what, I can be dropped this week or next week if I don't put up the numbers. And that's why we're starting to see certain players get better now with, competition in their positions, like our fullbacks, like, Townsend and Lamela, like John had mentioned earlier. So hopefully we can bring somebody in January, or hopefully someone else can work their way into the position and start to get and just start working the rotations a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, George, you mentioned there a player that can change again. It's funny you should say that, because just reading the comments from our Twitter feed, Johnny K69 says the player that he'd bring back is Gaza. I'm sure many people out there would agree with that one. We lack a creative genius who can go past people or pick out a pass and also score goals. Mary agrees with our guys. Modric, who else? Dynamo midfield wizard, she says. Nigel Cleary says Gary Lineker, goals, goals, goals. Quite a few people, unsurprisingly, also say Bale. Tom Parker says Bale, no reason needed, surely. And just one to throw in there, maybe come to John on this one, because he may have seen a little bit more of this guy play than I did. He says Chris Waddle, a man with a pass and a deadly crossing, sorely needed. Chrissy Waddle, John?
Well, I was born in '85.
Ah.
So I mean, obviously, yeah, we've all seen the videos and the DVDs of how good he was, and he was a great player. But I think he weren't really at Tottenham for long enough, I don't think, for me to. I know Van der Vaart was only there for 2 years, but he did make such a huge impact. But with Waddle, I think we're all right wide at the minute. I was trying to think of players that would go into the team straight into the team who the kind we haven't got already, and I do think we're all right on the wings, really. I know that people wanted us to maybe get Balassi or whoever else to play wide, but I think we're covered there. So I think we'll leave Chris and his mullet where it is.
Certainly the mullet and the singing. We'll leave that back in the 80s. Couple of other comments. Stuart Clement says, I would bring back Ledley King. Spurs through and through gave 100% for the club. I'm sure we all agree with that one. Chris Ion says Dave Mackay, the greatest ever Spurs player. Leadership, tackling and determination. And I think most of us would give anything to see him back in a Spurs shirt just for one game. Levying Spurs says Bale could single-handedly drag us to second this season. Power, pace and goals. So quite a few on there. Hoddle, just going down the list. And just to leave you with one final thought, Suk Sandhu says Musa Saeed. And on that note, I think we'll move on.
Wow.
Listen, I'm surprised anyone can remember Musa Saeed, let alone want him in the Spurs team.
I remember getting really excited by his signing. I remember. It was about 97. We paid about 2 million. I think he come from Auxerre in France.
Yeah.
And I was, I'm thinking, right, You know, we've got Nicola Berti in there already.
Nicola Berti.
Stephen Clements to come off the bench. You know, we could be going places with these guys.
Yeah.
And I remember Saeed had a blinding game when Klinsmann scored 4 at Selhurst Park against Wimbledon. And I think, you know, this could be a player here. But yeah, he just sort of disappeared after that.
Do you know one player I was gutted that we lost at the time we did was Nicky Barmby?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Amazing in the Spurs shirt, wasn't he? Part of that famous 5, went on and his career went downhill from there, didn't it?
It did really, yeah. I think it was homesick, wasn't it? I think that's why he went back up to Middlesbrough, if I remember rightly. Yeah, no, but he weren't really the same. Although he done all right at Liverpool, won a few trophies up there. But yeah, no, he was part of the front 5 that Ozzy Ardiles had playing for us, and it was. Yeah, really exciting time, yeah. So he went. We ended up with Chris Armstrong, didn't we, after
Chris
that?
Armstrong, oh.
And don't forget Rocket Ronnie. Yeah, it went downhill for us as well as Barnby.
And what was the name of the, I'm trying to think now, the guy we got on loan? The striker, tall striker, I think maybe came from Derby. Rasiak.
Oh, Gregor Rasiak, yeah.
Listen, we complain about the signings now. It's just... puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
It certainly does. In that the same summer we signed Gregor Rasiak, we signed Eddie Davids.
Ah, who'd have thought you'd see them 2 names in the same team, eh?
Exactly, especially in the same window. I don't know what Martin Yole was thinking.
Big Martin Yole. Listen, lads, we've got to move on. Running out of time a little bit, so we're going to move on to the previews for the coming weekend. It all looks a little bit more rosy now, doesn't it? You know, bearing in mind the win and Crystal Palace's recent result. Although, having said that, guys, George, Crystal Palace this season are nobody's mugs, are they? They've had a fairly decent season.
Oh no, they're very impressive this season. I think Pardew has definitely done wonders for that club. He's a Palace legend. A lot of people say he's an England legend. I actually had a friend at work, who's a Watford supporter. He was just saying he wants Pardew to eventually get the England job, which would be interesting. But for right now, I think he's definitely has Palace firing on all cylinders. I thought they were going to get a result against City on the weekend.
Yeah.
But City just has resources, among resources on the bench to come pull off, and they definitely nicked one right at the end. But yeah, no discredit to Palace at all. They've been somewhat good against us recently. I think they take? I think they took 3 points against us last season, if I'm to understand correctly. And so I'm gonna go into that one a little precautious. Guys like Balassi and their other winger now, what's his name, Sacco, I think. They're very deadly players and like to get into space. And, they're going to start throwing everything at us. So I think if we hold back and kind of play a more compact game, maybe try and play off the counterattack, have Dyer sit back a little more and just kind of shut everything down, I think we could, pull out a result. But nothing insane. I'm going to, if I had to say a result, I'd say maybe 2-1 Spurs. So just get a quick, easy win. Hopefully Eriksen's back by then, maybe bangs in one of his late goals, or maybe even Harry gets off his little scoring drought and gets back on during the Palace match. Because after that, I think we have Arsenal in the middle of the week and then City on the weekend. So it's a big week for us. No, yeah, not an easy run by any means. So if we could start off the week with a win to Palace, I think it'll just help our momentum going in. Because I think it's going to be, for the Arsenal match, it's going to be their kids versus our kids. And then comes Saturday or Sunday, I think, for the City match is going to be a real test. Because as good as City has been this season, they can be played and they can be beaten. And if we play like we did against them, I think when we went to the Etihad last season, we were very good for the first 20 minutes or so. Just once they scored, we kind of capitulated to an extent. I think that was when Bobby Soldado missed a penalty, if I'm to understand. And it's one of those situations that if it goes in, the entire game changes. So a little bit unlucky in that fixture, but hopefully next week we can get Palace out of the way, and then continue from that. Because hopefully I just hope that we build off of this win that we have right now. So that also means a good result at Qarabag this week. And I think, if we just keep building, we can, see some decent momentum. But I also want to see some of the other squad members or these new transfers that we bought, start getting played time. Like I said before, the likes of Wimmer and Trippier and players like that. So, yeah.
It's going to be great to see them coming in, isn't it? And, John, in terms of the run of fixtures that we've got coming up, our next 4 games are all at home, which could be key in getting a good run, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it will help. I mean, and this is why I love being a football supporter, because these, all right, take out the Europa game, but the next three, they're all massive games.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be, all right, we'll probably be underdogs in possibly two of them, depending on the side Arsenal put out. But I really don't think we'll play our kids in that one, George. I can imagine that he'll prioritise that one maybe over the City game, because I'd much rather give City 3 points and knock them out the cup, to be honest with you.
No, you're probably right. We do. I think as of recent, we've been taking our derby matches a little more serious. If you look at how we played Arsenal at the White Hart Lane fixture last year, we were by far the better team, and we just looked like we wanted it more. So I think if we could get our guys in the side like Mason, maybe Bentaleb will be back, or Townsend, these homegrown players that the derby means a lot more to them, then we may be able to have the upper hand.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Pochettino is unbeaten against them as well, isn't he? So I'm sure he'd want to keep that ongoing. But with Bentaleb's going to be out for a month apparently. That's what I've read today. So that's not very good.
Yes, you're right about that. So hopefully we can get in the other homegrown players. But I think that was the biggest factor in our performance against them last year, was they just seemed like they were going to play any other team, and none of the players really knew the significance. Whereas with our team, it was very evident that these players knew the game that they were going into. And they played
definitely.
like it too.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It does help, certainly does. I mean, on paper, you'd probably say that their players may be a bit, more polished. But like you just said, our players they're local lads, a lot of them, and they understand more what it means. So that helps them find that extra 10% needed to win these kind of games.
So listen, John, you're not going to get away with it that easy, mate. What's your prediction for? I know you're trying to put it off. What's your prediction?
Yeah, I think we drew at home with them last year. I think it was 0-0, and they beat us away. So we do owe them one. I remember saying 3-1 we'd beat Everton. So maybe if I say we'll lose 4-0 at Palace, we might win.
Yeah, I think that's a general rule on the podcast, isn't it? Just predict they'll lose, and they'll get.
No, I can see it. I think I'm going to go. I'm going to go with George. I think, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 home win, just because I think our fullbacks have been probably two of the strongest positions. Well, the whole back four's been good actually, but no one's really given our fullbacks a roasting, apart from like 2 seconds worth of Mahrez against Leicester. And I think that's where Palace's main threat comes from, is down the sides. So let's hope. Hopefully Harry will get a goal against Qarabag on Thursday, and then he'll crack on again on Sunday. And I think home win 2-1.
Home win 2. So
that's a really good point you make about the fullbacks, though, John. Because if you look in the United match, I think once Ashley Young came on the game, he was the player that really provided them a lot of threat going forward. And Kyle Walker, for most of it, had him kind of tied down pretty well. And in the match on Saturday, the Liverpool United match, they brought on Young, and he dominated that whole match. So teams that like to go wide, you could see how they do it. And I think you're right in regards to our fullbacks being, quite sound in holding back these attacking wide players. It's one of the reasons why, I think a lot of teams are lining up to try and play Chelsea right now and get a pop at them, because their dynamic wide players haven't really been too impressive so far. So yeah. I wish I would see a little more Rose. I think Rose is one of our best players. And I don't know if he's been out because of injury or if Davies is impressing that much more in training. But I really would like to see him, get back to starting regularly for us.
Yeah, I think it could be a bit of both with the Davies-Rose situation. I don't think Davies has done badly at all. He didn't really get a fair crack last season, I don't think. But at the same time, Danny was spot on, I think, all season. And I think going back to the fullback, especially Kyle Walker at right back, I don't think people give him enough credit for. I think he's a good player. I really do. I can't see there's many out there at the minute that I'd take over him. Even when Klein might have been available from Southampton, I'm thinking, no, everyone says Walker's suspect defensively, but I don't remember anyone really giving him a proper roasting for a long, long time. And I think a lot of Kyle's problems is, he can be, how can I put it, maybe not the most intelligent of players. And I think he gets himself in trouble most of the time. He doesn't, no one's getting him into trouble by skinning him. It's just that odd lapse in concentration. And I think where we've got Trippier in now to provide him with some competition, he seems to have got rid of a lot of that from his game. And I think he's done well so far this season.
Yeah, I think, lads, it's something like 3 clean sheets in a row we've got now. So, I mean, if we can build on that, it's great for that back four, isn't it? And then maybe build on that and bring the young players into a strong side, which is always the best way to, I think most managers will say, is the best way to do things.
Well, definitely, yeah. I mean, there's, as we learned, we mentioned Ozzy Ardele's team earlier on, didn't we? And that didn't last long because we couldn't defend for Toffee. I was going to say something else then.
That's
We
putting it
couldn't-
politely, yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't defend. You know, it was all about all-out attack, and going backwards, we weren't very good. And I think any savvy manager understands. You know, you've got to build from the back, and the fact that we've got a worldie in goal, and we have got what's a settled back four so far this season, and the Eric Dyer in front. I think we've got a really good back five plus goalkeeper there, and you know, the additions we needed to make further forward, maybe we didn't to the extent that some people wanted to, but I still think we're going massively in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, lads, on that positive note, we've got to call it a day. We've run out of time. Brilliant show tonight, guys. Really enjoyed that. Thoroughly enjoyed it. George, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you guys again for having me.
No problem at all, George. Listen, I'm sure there'd be people listening who'd like to maybe get in touch, maybe follow you on social media. Can people out there do that?
Yeah. Go ahead, give me a follow on Twitter. My @ name is Boy George, but with zeros as the O's. I usually post a lot of stuff about Spurs. So if you're into having more Spurs accounts on your timeline, go ahead, give me an ad.
Brilliant stuff. Listen, George, just promise us you'll come back on the show in the future.
Oh, hey, if you're offering, I'll be here.
Great stuff. Listen, absolute pleasure. And also, of course, my thanks to Jon. Jon, thanks for coming on, buddy.
No worries, mate. No worries. If I could just jump in there as well, get me on Twitter.
Yeah, please do.
It's at JONTHFC.
Brilliant stuff. Listen, give the guys a follow on Twitter. Always talking, great stuff. Always talking football, and massive Spurs fans, which is, of course, why we're all here, and the most important thing of all. As I say, we have for tonight, unfortunately, run out of time. We'll be back next Sunday after the Crystal Palace game to talk Qarabag, to talk Crystal Palace, and I'm sure much more. My thanks to George and Jon. Don't forget, guys, give us a follow on Twitter at @E_Spurs, and if you're on the Facebook, it's E-Spurs page. We'll be back next Sunday. Have a great week, guys, and as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Tottenham, no one can stop them.